Hello, my name is Darren Thomas, and I'm the Director of Educational Research Techniques, and this is Simpler, Practical Use of Machine Learning Algorithms in R. We are now in the final lesson of Chapter 4, Lesson 4 if you will, or Unit 4, excuse me, and we're now going to test our model. The model we're using, the model that we made using Lasso regression, the algorithm of this particular chapter. So why don't we go ahead and go over to R and see what we can learn here. So, you can see right here that I'm inside R. You guys got to know lines 1 through 3 is just kind of for review. We're trying to predict language score or language acquisition, if you will, based on the predictor variables that we have. We've been doing this for several units, several lessons now. So we're going to go ahead and test our model. So we have to set up our matrix. This is basically going to include all of our, it's going to have our test set in it. Again, this is review from chapter 3. Has our test set, but we only want the predictor variables from the test set. We don't want the actual dependent outcome variable, because we're going to use that for comparison to see how our model is doing. So I set up my object called test matrix, or my instance if you will, and then we already made our model in the last video in lesson 4.3. And so we're going to take our model that we made called Lasso, and we're going to use the new data called test.matrix. And we want the response, obviously, and we want to set the lambda to 0.02 because that was recommended to us last time. This is all wrapped inside a predict function, and we call the object lasso.y. We did this in chapter 3. There's nothing amazing here. So press Control Enter for lines 7 and 8. Now we make the plot. And so you can see that looks pretty good. We can draw our line as our regression line as well. You can see right there, I just did line number 10 right there, ab line. And so, you know, things that looks like a fairly good correlation, slope if you will. And we can get the actual number using line 11 if we press Control Enter. And so you can see the correlation between the predicted values and the actual values is 0.61, which is, you know, depending on the context, is fairly reasonable. And so the last step, of course, is that we want to find out what the mean absolute error is. So we want to calculate the residuals or the differences between the predicted and the actual values in line 12. We did this in chapter 3 again. We're kind of repeating ourselves. And lastly, we want to find the square of this, and that's our value there. Now, like I said before, the mean absolute value, or the square, whatever you want to call it, this is useful for model comparison in terms of how we're doing. So what you can do, and this is something you can do on your own time as a way to challenge yourself. In this chapter, we use the NL Schools data set. But we could have used the SA Hearts data set over and over again, or even the Hitters data set way back in chapter 1. So, in order for you to grow and to develop a deeper understanding of this, excuse me, you might want to use the different algorithms you know already with the different data sets that you've been exposed to throughout this course. So, using Lasso on the SA Hearts data set, or using Ridge, if you will, on the NL Schools data set that we use in this particular chapter. And this way you can get an idea of which algorithm is most appropriate for that particular data set. Again, normally, almost always, the lower the error, the better the model is in terms of prediction. And that's a useful tool for you. So this pretty much concludes chapter 4. In this particular chapter, all we did was we figured out how to use Lasso regression, which essentially has the same syntax or the same code as when you're doing ridge regression. The difference is in terms of how it works. In that Lasso regression, you can shrink things, you can pretty much remove things from the model almost, but this is not always the case with ridge regression. And so that is one of the main primary benefits of it. And so I hope that this video was useful for you, and that you were able to develop a deeper understanding of how Lasso regression works and how it can help you if you ever want to use this in your own work. So, my name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. This is Simpler, Practical Use of Machine Learning Algorithms in R. Thank you.